let's go on a whistle-stop tour of whether you should lower your prices or not. So I'm going to start off with a story. I had a coffee shop for 5 years in the centre of Bath on the High Street, and twice we did £1 lattes for a week. The reason we did this is from the calculations that we'd done before. Lattes should make up the proportion of our sales, and they weren't. We were only selling like 3 a day or something beforehand because revenues weren't very high. So we thought, let's see what happens if we put it down to £1, make it an offer so good people feel stupid saying no. So I painted up a cardboard box, and for an entire week I was in the box outside the shop shouting up and down the street at thousands of people. Yes, I became that guy very quickly. And to my surprise, / not, over that weekend, we went from doing 3 lattes a day to 600 over the weekend. That's awesome. So wait, why don't you just do this? Well, ordinarily, I think at the time a latte was like £3.30. So now all of a sudden, we're not really making money. On a coffee, I can't remember the costings. I think milk was about 20p, coffee was about 30p, the cup was about 20, so about 70p on costs of goods, roughly, not including electricity and all that sort of stuff, and wear and tear machines and whatever, because it's just too hard to figure out. So we went from making like £3, so that is a difference of £2.60 over £3.30, 26 over 33. About 60 to 70% profit margins down to like nothing, essentially, down to 20% or something silly, right? But still making money, right? So this was a good idea. Well, what happens to average spend? Average spend of the entire day went from like £5.20 per transaction now down to like £3 something. And you're like, yeah, but you had so many more transactions. You're like, yeah, we did. But considering 2 out of the £3 worth of coffee, the company's not making money, right? But it did consistently change the theme of what customers seemed to buy. The tricky thing is the location of the business at the time is we're a high street coffee shop, right? People aren't really travelling to come to us. It's tourists, opportunistic tourists who are there, right? Or people that live like locally. And it was a great strategy to get people to notice us. But was it beneficial revenue generating? Well, there are things that need to be considered. So margins, first of all. There are fixed costs that still need to be paid. Wages, electricity, rent, blah, 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 blah. Now that your profit percentage is so small, you've now got much less absolute profit per transaction to pay for those things. So now, have you made a profit for the day? Yes or no? In the situation where we now had to have, because it was so busy, queue out the door the entire time, we had to bring in more staff, which increased the running costs for the day. We've also gone through loads more stock, so we actually created a bit of a stock control issue out the back. And there is a tax situation to consider. So inflating your revenue sounds great, but if that means you're crossing now a tax threshold that you didn't before, you may now be paying tax on things that you weren't previously, and it may have a massive negative. Or the VAT, like taxes end up becoming a bit of a pain here. If you're making less profit, but your revenue is higher, if you're a VAT registered business, then you pay more VAT on that, which creates less revenue. So in this circumstance, I can't remember for certain whether or not in that short period it actually made us money or not. But I want to propose a different thought process here. What happens if instead of the £1 latte deal, instead, this is what I would do today, is offer something much more valuable for the same price. So say, buy one, get 2 free on your lattes. If we stood outside and shouted that, I think the queue would have been just as long. But now the average transaction goes from like £1, someone coming in getting 1 or 2, to every single person having 3 at a minimum and paying the normal price of whatever it was, £3.30, £3.50. And then with the other people who potentially buy stuff on top, you're now looking at more of a much normal average cost per transaction. But the deal's still the same, but you're now giving more for the same cost rather than receiving less for giving the same, which makes a drastic difference to the company's profit amounts. Because now, £3.30, let's say it's £3.30, with a 70p per cup coffee, we've now got £1.20 profit per transaction instead of a 30p per transaction for the same deal. Ta-da! Sounds fantastic. Amazing. And then, I can even one-up this. The single biggest factor that pushed this offer was not the fact it was a £1 latte. Unsurprisingly, it was the idiot in a box outside shouting up and down the street non-stop for 12 straight hours for 7 straight days. So when looking back at this, what would I do again? Now, I might put in an offer so that I've got something to shout about. But I'd definitely go for the give more for the same price than receive less. That makes a hell of a lot more sense. But I also reckon if I hadn't even had an offer and I was just in the cardboard box and I just shouted it, it probably would work really well anyway, because it just makes people know you exist. I'm sure we would have had a significant uptick in revenue if I'd stood out there in a cardboard box and screamed down the road our Google reviews. Best hot chocolate in Bath. I can't believe I've never found this. I came all the way. I drove 100 miles today to get this. So worth it. Thanks, Kathy. You're a hero. Like, shouting that out will still get people's attention. And then they'll hear it and go, maybe. And I reckon doing that, the additional attention will increase flow of traffic, and the total revenue, which now is increased because of the flow of traffic, the difference in that with your normal margins is going to be so much greater than just what was happening before. So the next time you instinctively lurch to, we need something, let's lower the prices, put the effort into whatever way you were going to advertise it. Put the effort into that and do more of that anyway. Because I reckon that alone, if you've got more people top of funnel, more people who know you exist, as an example, let's say for every 1,000 people that walk past the shop, 3 come in. I don't know, that's probably quite off. Maybe 20 to 30 people come in for every 1,000 people that walk past. If you're now shouting out on the street for every 1,000 people that walk past, you're probably looking at more like 50 to 100. Straight up. And I don't think that's got to do with the drop of the price. I think that's got to do with them knowing it. So now, in this scenario, we're capturing more percentage of the people who walk past. But in most marketing situations, your 30 people per 1,000 that come in, that number will stay relatively constant. But instead of having 1,000 people, you might now push in 100,000 people. That's going to make a bigger impact than lowering your prices, and will make a much more profitable business, and trust me, way fewer headaches if you do it that way around. I'm not saying lowering prices is a bad idea. I am saying that, actually, but it does have its place. I think offering more for the same price is definitely a way better way to go. And the one time you might think that I can think off the top of my head as to why would you want to do this, stock rotation. If there is seasonal stock that you want to get rid of, or situations like that, it's not the worst idea to have an offer to get through stock quickly so that things aren't sitting around wasted. Right, if you need to liquidate an asset, or liquidate something that you bought that you thought was going to be an asset and is actually soon about to become a liability, you might want to get rid of it. So this might be a useful way to do it. But is it a good way to run a long-term business? Hell no. I actually think you could go as far to say just double your prices instead, because of what that would do to your profit margin. Imagine you have a coffee shop, right? £3.30, 70p to make it, you're looking at £2.60 profit for the coffee. If now you charge £6 for a coffee instead, you've now got £5.30 profit, which is over double. Huge. Went from £2.60 to £5.30, and we haven't even doubled the prices. But you're now looking at roughly like 2.5 to 3 times the profit because of how high the profit margin was to start with. Would you now have 2.5 to 3 times fewer customers? Probably not. Especially if they're tourists who are walking by, who see coffee, and most people's purchasing habits with coffee, as an example, are, what's the point in even looking at the prices? I want it, where do I tap? It's going to be less than 10, don't really care, yes. And so doing that is probably the better option out of all of them. There's more ways to fix a problem than initially seem, and generally most people's gut instinct of what to do, wrong, usually. So go and find someone who has done something successfully that you want to do and ask them. If you've got any ideas, want to have a chat, shoot me a message, leave a comment. So happy to talk through this because I love this sort of stuff. But hopefully this has fixed the gut reaction of, I need to lower my prices, I need to lower it, like Black Friday deal, I need to do this, like don't do it. Not worth it. We've got, we don't have a Black Friday offer on right now. And my last 4 sales calls, 3 of them have been upsells, much more than normal. So it's not making any difference. We don't have any offers on. Like, you're okay. Let's think about this. Have a great day. Peace.